These are the areas of your business that are ripe for exploitation. So what are there things that could potentially get you into new business lines? Are you testing new ways of doing things that could help revamp your entire process, that could make you more cost effective, that could produce a better product? What are those things that are sort of maybe on the periphery? Margaret Wheatley did a study on where the most change occurs in nature. And what she said was, if you're in the ocean, things are status quo and you sort of do what you always do. And if you live on the land, things are status quo and you do what you always do. But if you live on the intersection of the seashore where the water meets the land, the organisms that are living there, think about a crab, they had to learn to swim in the ocean, but then when they get on land, they're able to crawl, right? So that's an extreme amount of adaptation, and it happens when two environments meet up. So when you think about the fact that our global economy, when we were just focused on the United States, we developed products just for the United States. But as we started to sell products abroad, when our United States world was butting up against China, or butting up against Japan, or butting up against any of the European countries, now all of a sudden we had to be creative, right? We had to put steering wheels on the other side of the car. We had to be able to think in metric, which obviously was never very successful here, right? But we had to get our heads around all these new innovative type ways of doing things, because if we wanted to be successful, not just in our own environment, but in their environment, we had to meet them where they were. So when you're thinking about your own opportunities, think of where your areas of boundary are. Who are your normal customers, and who do you want to sell to in the future, and what do you have to do to get there? Because that's going to be your most creative area, where innovation can flourish the most. Because with your tried and true customers, you've gotten to know them, they've gotten to know you, you're sort of in this routine. But your customers are also reaching out to new boundaries. And how are you going to help them reach their new boundaries? Because I guarantee, if you can help them be successful, you know this, you're going to be successful. So trying to figure out where those are. So when we think about areas ripe for exploitation, we're thinking about vertical opportunities. So these are creating additional products and services for the same type of customer based on specialized needs. So think about what Walmart did, right? Walmart started off as selling products and services. They now sell insurance, they're now getting into healthcare, they're getting into automotive, all these different, in automotive they're into food, all these different things that they looked at, the middle class consumer, and they said, yeah, right now we're selling them pens and paper and little things. Now we want to take that same customer base and we want to keep selling more to them, to that same exact customer base. So they're not selling to, the huge corporation. They're not selling insurance to Northrop. They're selling insurance to people who can't afford insurance, maybe who don't have jobs, or are working for really small companies where it's really expensive. Notice they've taken that same niche of customer and they just keep adding more and more products and services to sell for them. What can you do vertically? You have your traditional customers. What additional stuff can you provide them that'll make you more integrated into their life? Because if you're more integrated into their life, they're not going to want to let you go. And it shows that you're continually trying to help them reach out to more customers, because you're right there with them and you're providing more products and services. Horizontal opportunities is where you create generic products or services that serve a wide range of buyers. So, if you sell a widget and you sell it to the automotive industry, how can you take that same widget and sell it to the retail industry or to the plane industry, aerospace? How can you take the same thing that you're doing for one set of customers and sell it more broadly across other customers? That's a horizontal type marketing approach. Does this make sense? You can also think about opportunities when it comes to your customers. So selling different or more products or services to your existing clients. So when I worked with EDS, we had monthly managers meetings, and what we would do is we each had our customer that we were responsible for, and we would come in and we would say, this is what we're currently selling them. And we would have people from other parts of the company come in and say, well, here's something new and creative that we're doing for this customer, and here's something new and creative we're doing for that customer. And what we were tasked to do is to take these two new ideas, go back to our customer, and see if they could use those products. So you're doing upsell to your existing customer. And as I mentioned yesterday, your white space customers are your sexy customers. They're the ones you've never had before. It's really exciting. Everybody gets all jazzed about taking those brand new customers. But those customers are the hardest ones to get. Those customers are the ones that cost you the most money to go get. Whereas your existing customers, you already have a trust relationship built up with them. They don't have to worry that they're going to lose their jobs by hiring you again, because you've already been a tried and true entity. Around DC, we always talk about that you don't want to show up, you don't want to have your customers show up on the front page of the Washington Post. Because when the Washington Post gets wind of a government person doing something unethical or maybe giving too much business to one company or in an unfair manner, the Washington Post shows up and they interview them. So you want to make sure that you're giving your customers good, solid reasons to hire you, and that your existing customers, they've already vetted you, so they know that they can trust you. Whereas if you're a brand new vendor to them, you could happen to land them on the front of the Washington Post. So that's sort of the struggle that you're dealing with for new customers versus existing customers. Obviously, your new clients, you can sell your products and services to new clients. Much harder sell, but it can be done. Okay, so most people think that selling to new clients is more exciting, but studies have shown that if you provide great products and services, it is much easier to get existing clients to buy from you than to acquire a brand new customer. So this isn't just me talking, this is research. How does this apply as you embark on federal business? What ends up happening a lot in the government space is that the incumbent contractors, and when I say incumbent, they're the ones that have the contract today, they're really just like a lot of us are, right? They're really excited when it's brand new, but as the contract goes on, the incumbent contractor gets kind of complacent. Oh yeah. I know I have to do this for this customer that I've had for 10 years, but I have this other brand new project over here and I want to make sure that I start off on a good foot, so I'm going to focus over here for a while. And this customer starts to feel very neglected. And so when it comes time for recompete, unless that company puts together a really stellar proposal and can demonstrate that they're doing things constantly to improve themselves, that customer's going to turn away from that incumbent and go elsewhere, because they're not getting the same quality of service that they used to when it was a brand new customer. So, and the other thing is that contractors typically say the government has a short-term memory. What have you done for me lately? So you may have done a fabulous implementation 6 months ago, and now you're up for recompete, and you're feeling pretty good because you did this fabulous implementation. But the government's sitting there saying, well, yeah, well, that was 6 months ago. What have you done for me lately? So you always have to prove your value to your government customer. So what are some examples of opportunities in your own industries?
She's going to break out hangman or something, so maybe say something. We were talking about it yesterday. Let's pick on Blue World here. Because y'all offer such a great product that, and you hear from companies what the needs are, so there's potential, right? We talked about some of that yesterday.
Yeah, so can you give us an example?
Well, there's a lot of agencies that could use the product. So how many different organizations use cleaning products?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's a wide market, and then it's finding the ones that will be first looked at.
Uh-huh. So you have certain products that have a higher profit margin on them than others. So you want to sell perhaps the higher profit margin type products to customers than the other ones. Have you thought about broadening your, do you guys produce your cleaning supplies, or do you buy them from outside? You produce them. And Can you give us an example from your past of where you broadened your product line?
Oh, yeah, we had, well, in 2005, when I bought the company, we had one product, and we're producing 69 different
Oh, good.
products.
Good. And can you talk a little bit about your growth pains going from one product to 69 products?
Yeah. It's a lot to keep up with, and we're still having those, issues now, because the inventory, raw material inventory for one product is pretty simple compared to that for 69 products.
Mm-hmm.
So we're proud of what we do, but it is a struggle to maintain it right.
Sure. Think about that. You've got to have different raw materials with different suppliers. You've got to have, instead of one marketing campaign, you've got to have multiple marketing campaigns. You've got to, every bottle needs to be packaged in a certain way for each. You're not just doing one anymore, you're doing 69. Everything multiplies up like that, and it becomes, you may have been perfectly good handling one, but you really have to think strategically about how you're growing to 69, right? Because it impacts every aspect of your business. You may need a different manufacturing line, for example. You might need new facilities to handle all that. So different distribution centers. So those are all kinds of things that you need to think about as you grow to take on some of those new opportunities. We talked about FedBizOps yesterday. As I mentioned, that all opportunities available in the federal government. They have all different kinds of things that are listed in there, as you started noticing yesterday. They have requests for information. Normally, this is where the government's just trying to glean information from you to do their market research. Requests for quote. Sometimes those are just to get your bottom line price. Sometimes they actually result in contracts. Your request for proposal, which we're going to spend the bulk of this class talking about. They'll also do amendments to existing solicitations. So if they issue their RFP, and companies come back with questions and they make changes to their RFP, those changes are called amendments. And you'll see, Amendment 1, Amendment 2. You always have to be working with the most current version of the amendment. The vendors' questions that came in on a solicitation and all the answers, they'll be posted there. Any bidders' conferences that they may hold, they'll be posted there. Invitation for bids, we'll talk about this later, but the government has two ways of buying things. Request for proposal or invitation for bid. They tend not to use invitation for bid as frequently, but that's where they tell you the requirements. You can't ask any questions. It's straight commercial buys, and you just give them a bottom line price. And then they open them up in public, and they select the winner based on low cost. So they don't tend to do that as often. They tend to do more of these requests for proposals. And we talked about reverse auctions yesterday. Other ways to find out about federal opportunities, if you look at prime contractor websites, you'll see that there's lots of different career positions on there. Those typically represent positions that they have on a federal contract that are currently not being filled, so they're losing money on it every day. That's a good way to get, if any of your people meet any of those requirements, to get them in for something like that. A supplier system, a lot of federal contractors have large supplier systems, and you can just call them up and ask to be part of that supplier system. So companies used to be really not good about their subcontractors. Everybody would sort of figure out their own subcontractors, and there wouldn't be any sort of central repository for subcontractor stuff. The companies have gotten much better at that, and they have full-blown supplier systems, and they'll rate you on how you did on various contracts. And that information is available to other people in the company that need to buy your products and services. So even if you just get into their supplier systems, you can get potential federal contracts. And then we talked about making sure that you could attend bidders' conferences. Okay, the last area are threats, and these are conditions stemming from factors that could adversely affect your future business. So threats can come from your competitors, because if your competitors pay more attention to this lecture that I'm giving you than you do, they're going to be stronger than you are, right? Because they're focusing on what their strengths are, their opportunities, their weaknesses. New technology, technology has the ability to create a lot of new worlds, and it can reduce the amount of processing time. You choose how much technology you want to bring in. because oftentimes it does replace people. So it's a balancing effort as to how you want to run your business. Your market conditions, what's going on in the economy right now. What new ideas do you have? I mean, think about the Olympics, right? When the Olympics are happening, we as Americans in particular, we're always looking for that next great idea, the next great app, the next whiz bang, it's going to cause the industry to move, springboard forward so fast, right? But if you think about the Olympics, each person in the Olympics, the difference between first place and not even mentioned, the gold medal and not even mentioned, oftentimes are fractions of a second. Fractions of a second. So think about that. What can you do in your industry that are just these small incremental changes that cause you to improve? You don't have to be brilliant and come up with the next great idea. You could very easily just do incremental changes and improvements that get you, shoulders length above your competitors. It's not as fun to think about, and it's more mundane, but it's those little tiny increments that really can cause you to go forward. And that's the difference between our culture and a lot of the Asian cultures. Because our CEOs tend to stay in their jobs for shorter periods of time, and they tend to, they always are answering, in larger companies' cases, they're always answering to Wall Street, so they have to justify why their numbers have gone up or down, right? So they're always in this justification mode. So if there's anything that's going to cause them to drop, what's going to happen to their money, their own personal money? It's going to go down. So they're not inclined to want to do anything long-term or strategic, because if it doesn't impact because long-term and strategic costs money today, and it's not showing the rewards till later on. Whereas in our Asian communities, they tend to have like a 50-year planning horizon. Well, and they tend to be thinking collectively about the good of the company, because those personal incentives aren't there. So when you think about collective good of the company and 50 years out, and you're making these, it's okay to make these slow, as long as today you're better than you were yesterday, you're good. Whereas we don't tend to think like that, right? We tend to have a much shorter planning horizon, and our CEOs are focused on their own pockets as opposed to the good of the company and the growth. And huge companies, this never ceases to amaze me. I worked for EDS, which was a 150,000 person company located all over the world. It does not exist today. And so if that can happen to a 150,000 person company, it can happen to any company. And if you look at the DoD space and you look at who the competitors are, if you look back at maybe 10 years, there were like 30 main DoD contractors. You know how many there are now? 5 main DoD contractors. And want to hear something else scary? I don't know if it's true this week, but up until this week it was true. Apple could buy all 5 of the top DoD companies. Apple has a significant downfall lately, but they could buy all 5. That's what their profit margins look like, that they can buy the top 5. I'm talking about Boeing, Lockheed, Martin, these really huge companies. So my point is, the competitive landscape changes. Companies go under, they don't exist anymore, they get purchased, merged, acquired, all these different things that happen. So you can never take your company for granted, because it just could not be there tomorrow. Price pressure, the first person that enters if I have a brand new widget, and I'm the first one that has it, what can I charge for it?
That's what you want.
Anything I want, right? But then as all of you start seeing my product and seeing how successful I'm being, and you start entering the market, or, as I mentioned, I just came from China, the big trade war with China. The fact that a lot of the Chinese companies just take our technology, and they don't have all that R&D expense that we had, because they just take the end product and they manufacture it, and they actually go and get patents. Do you know Black & Decker? This was 20 years ago. I was part of a diplomatic delegation to China, and we met with the president of Black & Decker, and before we went over. And he was telling us that they had some brand new tool, I don't know what it was, that they were showcasing at conferences. And when they got to, when they went over to Asia, the Chinese company had already taken their idea